The following review is intended for entertainment purposes and targeted for adult fans of the series.
Kit says that he thought that card was only for emergencies, but as I'm remembering that I didn't sync at all, so not Len. Oh, Len says not this time. Hello there, heroes! I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to another Kamen Rider Dragon Knight episode review. Last time, we started off with excitement, as Case gave Kit and Len their new Survive Mode cards, able to power up their rider forms. However, she will not get to see Kit use that card, vented by Strike at the end of the episode. Let's see Len begin his quest for revenge as we take a look at the 31st episode of Kamen Rider Dragon Knight, Xaviax IS Wrath.
Please make sure you're subscribed to the channel.
Yeah, and make sure you got your notifications set up by hitting that little bell icon.
Right you. What he said was, you can consider checking us out on Patreon or Ko-fi at Orange Ranger Videos. Right you.
The cold open is actually really quick and to the point. Xaviax, in Wrath's body, rotates around in that cylinder thing in the center of the room, expressing surprise that the riders actually managed to injure this human body. He tells JTC to keep the pressure on as he heals. After the titles, a moment that doesn't really ring very true for a hero generally, but does make sense for Kit specifically. He has transformed into Dragon Knight and is running around looking for Strike for a fight. Never mind the fact that Strike could just stay where he is and Kit could be wandering around like this for hours. Probably better to just pick a place and listen for the mirror shimmers. Anyway, Strike indeed comes out and they start a fighting. Strike gets under DK's skin when he says he's surprised because he was expecting to see Wing Knight. Siren was his girlfriend after all. Or was she Kit's girlfriend? But then he gets the better of him using Metal Jealous. We see more of that dry wit that I've been complimenting as Strike draws two cards, Thrust Final Vent and his own, and tells Kit to pick one. Kit sarcastically asks for a Get Well card instead, and Strike says nope and selects his own. Perhaps reflecting the fact that the audience might be getting a little tired of all these final vents getting interrupted all the time, this one lands directly. However, Kit is not vented because of reasons. Wing Knight shows up saying he'll take care of this and pulling out the Survive card. Kit says that he thought that card was only for emergencies, though again, I'm really not sure what constitutes an emergency at this point. You're fighting for the fate of the world, but Len says no, not this time. The card seems to pull him and Strike into some kind of alternate dimension that's foggy and brightly lit. This may just be for visual effects, similar to a Power Rangers morphing sequence. Even his card visor is transformed, turning into an ornate gold and blue sword within a shield situation. He slots the card and pulls out the sword. His rider form transforms, getting a blue and gold Batwing themed shield on his chest, a billowy cape that always seems to be held out and billowing somehow, and his helmet gets additional gold touches. Strike can tell that this probably isn't great news for him, backing away as Wing Knight advances and then taking off with Wing Knight running after him. Dragon Knight also makes to pursue, but that's when Wrath shows up, beating him around with some actually impressive just straight up martial arts. Right as the scene cuts away, we get this snap zoom on Wrath and he seems to wince like he might still be injured. But honestly, the cut is so quick and so badly placed that it's really hard to tell. Strike runs into a dead end, clearly some kind of traffic tunnel with a road in it, so I highly doubt that, but he decides to try and fight. and is very clearly outclassed. He tries to summon his Strike vent, and Wing Knight just smacks it away with his sword, also slicing Strike's arm in the process. Cut back to Wrath and DK, and Wrath clearly has the advantage on the dragon-themed rider. But then Strike calls for Xaviax's help telepathically, because I guess that's a thing that they can do. Wrath bats him away and telepathically answers the call. He turns to gloat at Dragon Knight before teleporting away, but Kit has disappeared. This distracts Xaviax, who goes looking for him instead of teleporting away. Now, I'm not saying that Len is even just a touch pissed off at Strike about the whole case thing. What I'm saying is that a wounded and panicking Strike is running down another road tunnel, wondering where his backup in Xaviax is, when Wing Knight runs him down with his motorcycle.
Good, Anakin, good. Kill him.
Strike tries to lie his way out of trouble, saying that he could see that Xaviax is bad now, and he wants to switch sides and fight alongside them. He was tricked. That was the thing, just like all the other riders. Wing Knight says he should have thought of that before he vented Case. Strike claims that that was just an accident, but Wing Knight, of course, knows better. Strike keeps up the begging even as he secretly activates Metal Jealous, who rams into Wing Knight and shows us that there does seem to be an upper limit to the Survive mode's power. It's not as strong as an Advent Beast, for example. DK catches up and tries to help, but Wing Knight pushes him aside, saying that Strike is his alone. Is there an echo in here? Strike says what I just did, that it seems like even that new armor can't help with Advent Beast, and he's got 3 of them, by the way. Len says that he has a brand new one as well, activating a brand new Final Vent card. I looked into this on Rider Wikia, and it turns out that calling this a new Advent Beast might be a little bit of a stretch. This is actually still Blackwing, but Survive mode evolves Blackwing into Black Raider. And describing Black Raider, there's really no other way to say this.
Merchandising, where the real money from the movie is made.
So this usually isn't this blatantly obvious, even though I know it's the point of this show, but Black Raider is a monster that was clearly made to be a toy. It's a bat that turns into a motorcycle. The wheels are really obvious in the wings to kind of give that away. Strike is also unimpressed, activating Sting's Final Vent. Evil Diver and Black Raider fly towards each other, ridden by their, riders, and collide. Things go slow motion, and the music gets all dramatic as both riders are tossed aside. Wing Knight is knocked out of Survive mode. However, it's important to note that Wing Knight had the extra padding of that Survive mode. Strike was not so lucky. He staggers to his feet, and to his credit, he goes out running at the 2 good riders, but that's right, Kamen Rider Strike has been vented. His deck dramatically falls on the Thrust and Sting decks in what was a really cool shot, even if it came from rider footage. Nice little quick lesson about the futility of revenge, as Kit celebrates Strike being vented, but all Len can say is, it's not going to bring Case back. He collects all of the decks as Xaviax shows up and says that, well, in that case, he'd be happy to let the 2 of them join Strike. He's standing at the end of a tunnel because if there's anything that Wrath is good at, it's well-framed, dramatic shots. Wing Knight sort of insta-morphs into Survive mode, but Kit decides to join him for the first time. Weirdly, though, in his alternate void dimension thing, which is a lot more fiery than Wing Knight's, it's Wing Knight that he's facing off with, almost like the 2 of them were fighting each other in the original footage. His card visor also transforms into, honestly, kind of a goofy-looking dragon head sword gun thing, where it opens up and the cards go inside the mouth. He gets a red chest shield, gold accents all over the suit, and weirdest of all, 2 kind of pointy, I think, whiskers for the dragon, but really acting more like antenna. Wrath, for some reason, maybe having something to do with the fact that his belt is gold when nobody else's is just as strong as the Survive Mode riders, able to hold them off and even knocking Wing Knight down. Dragon Knight comes in for the save, saying they have to think of something else, and the two run a short distance off. Kit suggests throwing everything he has at Xaviax, holding him, and having Len activate his final vent. But Len rejects that plan, saying he just lost Case that way, and he's not going to lose Kit that way too. That is an excellent strategic point, except for one little problem.
It's a total fabrication. It never happened. It never happened. This one was invented by a writer.
I can kind of understand where the writers got confused here, and by the way, I do realize how egotistical it sounds when I'm just a fan watching the show, maybe a reviewer, but still just a fan. They wrote the actual episodes, and I'm saying I understand where they got confused, but hey, when they're wrong, they're wrong. Case and Kit did have that plan, and they used it, and it didn't work, and the fight kept going. Then Case was vented by Strike being sneaky. Anyway, Kit insists to Len that they have to use teamwork and work together, and he does agree, but switches their two positions around. So he's the one holding Wrath in place. Wrath shows up, and the two of them both start fighting him, because that sure was the plan they literally just discussed. He gets Kit down and goes for the kill, but it's another patented Wing Knight save. As we go back to some trees to try and meld this footage together, Wing Knight activates a brand new card, Blast Vent. Black Raider uses the motorcycle wheels in its wings to fire tornadoes at Wrath, but again, teleporty powers. We see Kit lying on the ground, telling himself he has to get up and help Len. Kind of reminds me of when Sting was doing the exact same thing. Down on the ground, but telling himself to get up and help Len. But, nah. There's no way they'd go for that. We've got 10 episodes left, and Kit is the title rider. There's no way they're going for that connection. You can't beat what you can't hit. And Wrath just keeps teleporting around the battlefield. Kit tries to activate his Survive final vent, but he runs out of power and transforms back down to base mode. Wrath knocks Wing Knight down and activates his own final vent, showcasing the first appearance of his Advent Beast, who is creatively named Gold Phoenix. Wow.
Who the f*** is in charge of naming things in Pacific City? Probably on reflection the same people who came up with Pacific City.
Kit runs up and says that he doesn't have much time, though I don't really even think he had the time to say, I don't have much time, seeing as the final vent was activated, though I'm getting nitpicky there. He activates his caffeine-free vanilla final vent, kicks towards Wrath, and Xaviax disappears. Kit hits the ground and Wrath reappears, turning to face him. "Goodbye, Kit Taylor," he says, and fires off the attack, which is literally just slamming his body into Dragon Knight with the gold bird coming in behind him. Kit takes the blow full blast and is thrown a good distance away. But I mean, we saw him take a final vent earlier in the episode and he was just fine. And I mean, besides, this is Kamen Rider Dragon Knight of the television program Kamen Rider of the Dragon Man Knight Hero. He is titular. This is his name. Surely not, right? He's okay, right?
Wrong, 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 wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong.
And Kit rises, seemingly okay until... That feels weird. He realizes very quickly what's happening, and as Len futilely runs towards him, he tries to tell Len that it's okay, as he disappears. Kamen Rider Dragon Knight has been vented.
What are you talking about?
But as it turns out, slamming your body just full force into another rider can be kind of bad for you as well. Okay, I think it's because they had established, or at least they thought they had established throughout the episode, that Wrath's body was injured, but Xaviax made it keep fighting. But yes, Kamen Rider Wrath is also vented. But when Wrath disappears, Xaviax stands there triumphant. It's just Wing Knight and Xaviax now, which Xaviax sees as a winning proposition. Of course, Wing Knight is the only one of them that's still a Kamen Rider. However, the implication is that Xaviax has plenty of power in his original alien form. He sees Kit's deck at Len's feet and telekinetically snatches it away, saying that he thinks he's going to keep this one as a souvenir. And then he disappears. Wing Knight powers down, then sees Wrath's deck on the ground. As he goes to pick that up, the weight of everything finally collapses on him as he hears Kit's declaration to be a true Kamen Rider, and then what he said when he was vented. Len slams the deck back down on the ground as Michelle and the No Men finally find him.
Not now, Kakarot!
Maya runs over, and Len doesn't even have to say anything, just looking at her. She knows immediately what's happened and hugs Len, starting to cry. Trent and Lacey look at each other and then walk over to support her, joining in the group hug. Unfortunately, there's a little moment that's funny even in the middle of this emotion, as there's this close-up on Maya's face and she looks like she's trying to cry, but there are no tears actually on her face. The next shot is Michelle looking at one of her agents like, She finally walks over and interrupts the moment, saying that Len needs to come with her. Maya tells her to back off, but she hands Len a picture and asks if this looks familiar. We can just kind of see through the back of the picture that this is some kind of rider-shaped individual, shall we say. Len's demeanor immediately changes, asking to be immediately taken to this person, and telling Maya as he heads to the car that they may just win this war. Let's read the cards. Episode 31, Xaviax is Wrath. Pros: a bombastic ride from start to finish, flows nicely from the previous episode, and the bravery to kill off the hero. Cons: the No Men are a last-minute afterthought, Wrath being vented is weird, and Strike weakens before the end. None of my cons take anything away from this episode. I feel like maybe I've been hesitating, saving this for the good stuff. I may have actually done it already, I can't really remember, but here we are! Xaviax is Wrath gets 5 cards out of 5. This does kind of feel like starting from the end, but to put this in some really technical, researched, educated, reviewer-type language. Boom! Pow! Kaplowy! Woo! This episode does not waste a single moment of time. Big fights right from the start, using the survive mode cards. This episode is action almost start to finish, but here's the thing. Unlike certain other shows, Power Rangers Super Mega Force, the fights have been earned. There's a lot of story that has built up to all of these fights. They're not just action for their own sake, they're the conclusion of major plot threads. The story has built up a lot of story capital and just kind of spent it to have a lot of fun and bombast here. And flowing nicely from the first pro into the second, this episode flows very nicely from the previous. This show has only one official two-parter, the finale, but clearly the story has flowed from one episode to the next, and here, it's just very clear that this is the next moment. The good writers are still fuming about Case being vented, Wrath is still dealing with battle injuries, and all of the motivations for everyone to fight are just so fresh and raw that it's just clearly the very next moment in the story. The bad guys scored last time, both teams scored this time, and while the bad guys did lose 2 riders and the good guys only lost 1, he may have been the most important one. And yeah, not to bury the lead here, but they just killed off the show's title character. I remember when I watched the show the first time and this happened, I was absolutely stunned. I was clearly being facetious earlier in the review when I was talking about it, but those were basically my real thoughts the first time I watched the show. No way. No way that they're gonna vent Kit with this long left to go in the show. But they did.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
I will admit, this is an incredibly half-hearted con because personally, I was actually pretty grateful for it, but in terms of the narrative, it is something I have to call out. You can't just have the no-men show up at the last minute without reminding the audience that they're still out there. This is another thing that really makes it feel like this was written as a 2-part episode, because in the first episode, they established well enough that they were out there looking for the riders, but in this episode, they're completely out of the picture until they show up at the end at the worst possible time. I mentioned earlier that both teams scored this time. Kit was vented, but the bad guys lost both Strike and Wrath. Strike, next con notwithstanding, was understandable. He was vented by a scorned lover in Len, kind of like Duras was by Worf on Star Trek The Next Generation. Wrath doesn't really make a lot of sense. He won his fight. I was kind of expecting for Wrath and Kit's final vents to collide, saving Len, and then they both get taken out that way. But no, Wrath dodged Kit's vent, and then final vented him, and he just got vented anyway. You can say that they established that the human body was injured, and maybe that's how he was vented, but they did such a bad job of establishing that into the episode that it's really not clear if it was the case, and it just comes off as a weird choice. So weird a choice that I find myself wondering, and you can answer this question down in the comments, if maybe part of the Japanese writer's motif was, like the Phoenix, his final vent kills him, but then he resurrects, like the Phoenix from the ashes. And yes, next con notwithstanding. On one hand, it does kind of make perfect sense for Strike to start trying to use his wits to save his snakeskin. I was tricked. I want to switch sides now. I've seen the light. I'm a good person after all. But on the other hand, after praising JTC's dry wit so much, I almost preferred for him to face the end with that same dry wit. All right, fine. Wow, the good guys get even more powerful and save the day. Good for you. It only took you like 7 miracles to finally beat me. And I got your girl, Wing Knight. Never forget that. But like I said, wow. This was incredible, and action, and shock, and drama. I wonder what happens in episode 32 of, well, I guess Kamen Rider Wing Knight now. Let's find out by taking a peek at Advent Master Returns. Len is taken to the Advent Master, whom he is able to revive. Xaviax moves to start taking the people of Earth, helped by a familiar face. As the sides fight, the Master brings in some unexpected help. And that is going to do it for another Kamen Rider Wing Knight episode review. Thank you, heroes, so much as always for watching. Down in the comments below, let me know what you thought of this episode, as well as my review of it. If you've watched this show, what were your thoughts when Dragon Knight was actually vented? Not a dream, actually fading away, like 10 episodes to go. What were you thinking? Let me know down in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Look for me anywhere on the internet you see Orange Ranger videos or Orange Ranger plays. And until next time, heroes, may the power of the cards protect you. Yes, Kamen Rider Strike has been vented. His deck dramatically falls, but I don't remember that part. Things go slow motion, and Wing Knight kind of insta-morphs into survive mode, but Kit decides to use him for the first... Wing Knight kind of insta-morphs... Shooting with a cat. Kit suggests throwing... Yay! I can kind of understand where the writers got writers. Kit vented by a scorned lover in that's what happens when you ad-lib.